Pankaj Gupta from EthAum Partners. If I ask you to name one industry which impacts highest number of lives because of technological innovation, disruption, what would your answer be? Probably retail, healthcare. Retail is one of the industries that has always spearheaded technological adoption. When we saw internet boom, internet revolution in 1990s, 2000, it was one of the first industries to adopt that internet revolution. And then obviously e-commerce, mobile application, all of that happened. And now when AI and computer vision and robotics are revolutionizing all the industries, again, retail has been one industry which quickly adopted all these innovative technologies, which started doing experiments with these interesting new innovations. And that's why retail is very interesting playground for all these innovators from different parts of the world experimenting with different kind of technologies. And that's the reason that we are extremely bullish on retail industry. And that's the reason that we have Vyzion with us today to talk about CPG innovations and innovations in the warehouse space. Again, this is Pankaj Gupta, founder of EthAum Partners. We are a deep tech accelerator and fund based out of Singapore with approximately 90 startups in the portfolio. These are AI, ML, blockchain, IoT, robotics, AR, VR kind of startups from different parts of the world, stages and sectors, again, including retail, CPG. And we are hosting this thought leadership panel with Vyzion and some fabulous, exciting panelists to hear more from their insights, to learn more about the innovations that they are seeing around their ecosystem. So without further delay, I would request Kevin to do a brief introduction of himself and Vyzion, and then I would request our panelists to talk about themselves. Kevin?
Yeah, thanks, Pankaj. And thanks everybody for joining us today. My background is, the shorthand is I ran the Western Hemisphere for Time Magazine, but then jumping many years forward, I've been in new technology for about 15 years now, starting with AR and VR and XR and migrating over to AI as sort of the current power of technology in today's world. I'll give a very short introduction to Vyzion.ai now and then turn it over to Jorge for a brief greeting. All of you probably know something like this. There are 1 billion IP CCTV cameras worldwide, and only 1% are monitored effectively in any way, in large part, not to pick on human beings, but because humans have other distractions, restroom, phone calls, out late last night, et cetera, et cetera. So we see Vyzion.ai as the game changer to address that problem. The product itself is a B2B software solution that integrates cutting-edge vision, computer vision with AI capabilities with existing cameras to allow for analyzation and measuring operations to uncover and quantify relevant data. Our primary focus, which Pankaj alluded to, is sort of in retail, logistics, warehousing, roads and highways, and of course, manufacturing plants, which is part of why we have all come together for this discussion specifically. So maybe that will serve as a little bit of a intro, and we'll get to a deeper look in a few minutes. But Jorge, do you want to say hello and introduce?
Sure. Jorge de la Rosa. I've been in new technologies for over 11 years now. I founded Spinar, the initial company that Kevin and I we met. I founded that company and started that company in 2012, specifically focused on AR. 2016, we went into VR. 2018, we started developing AI and computer vision. And this company this product that we're presenting to you, it's a spin-off from Spinar. And Kevin introduced the product very well. That's what we do. And thank you for your time. Thank you for having us, and thank you, Pankaj, for organizing this panel.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Jorge, Dean, may I request you to do an intro?
Certainly. My name is Dean Phillips. I am the founder of Reality Safe, which is one of Longevity Industries products, which is focused on AR, VR safety in manufacturing. Also, I produce a podcast called The Destiny of Manufacturing. So I interview technology experts, manufacturing experts, focused around technology, where we're going over the next 5 years. My day job, of course, I work for Link Systems, which is a company focused around controls for manufacturing and safety devices, as well as I'm on the board of directors for SME, Society of Manufacturing Engineers, and on their Smart Manufacturing Advisory Council.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Dean. And I'm sure while recording your podcast, you may be getting a lot of insights from these experts, from these founders and presidents and technology experts. So we are going to get download of that very quickly. Thanks a lot. Will?
Yes, hi. My name is Will Donovan. I'm a management consultant focused mostly in the ERP universe. So for where these quote unquote new technologies hit the road, some of you may be familiar with, a lot of my clients would probably say they don't even have the basics down. And a lot of times they're talking about these technologies, but they have a lot of basics to nail down before they can get to them. My background is mostly in what you would consider to be the CPG product class, but I spent 10 years as a consultant to the Pentagon, focused on these classes of supply, if you will, within the context of the US military. I designed the Marine Corps and the Air Force's global munitions logistics and supply chain systems and implemented them. In my last step with DoD, I was designing the Navy's global logistics system before I decided to move back to commercial consulting. I was a consultant with Accenture and did a lot of IoT and RFID work in the logistics space with Harvey Nichols at Dubai Mall, and spent a lot of time with the Shell account doing a lot of vision work and a lot of WMS work, and looking forward to sharing some insights from my career. And like I said, very much at the tip of the spear of where this stuff is being implemented. That's very much my space.
Wow, well, that's a very interesting combination of experience that you got both in CPG and in warehouse space. And I'm sure you may be seeing a lot of hurdles that these innovative startups are facing while implementing, integrating their solutions. So I'm sure you would be able to talk about them as well. Exciting. Garrett, please unmute yourself.
There we go. Some impressive panelists so far. I'm feeling a little bit out of place. Hi, I'm Gareth. I guess some people call me a business development and entry market specialist, but really I'm a serial entrepreneur. My MO is to, because I live in South Africa, it's a third world economy, is to really not be that innovative as all. I like going to first world conferences, copying really cool ideas and bringing them to market here in South Africa. So if you're in the first world, you need to be innovative. If you're in the third world, you can just copy everyone else. So I'm not sure I'm qualified to be sitting here, but I've worked with a lot of technologies. I've had the good fortune to work alongside some amazing entrepreneurs, and I've launched successful ventures in the property, construction, consulting, project management, investment, and software spaces. I currently sit as a board advisor to companies in the blockchain, brain-computer interface, agri-tech, and AI sectors. And I am the current founder and CEO of Navist and Plausible Gaming. Navist is a boutique investment brokerage, and at Plausible Gaming, we're building the future of online multiplayer gaming. So quite a diverse range. So I guess the serial entrepreneur.
Gareth, believe me, you are extremely humble. Really appreciate your time, Gareth. We have one special guest with us, Victor. Could you please do a brief intro of yourself?
Hi, sure. Well, I'm the tech lead of Vyzion.ai. I have around 8 years of experience now in developing this kind of technology. We have made a patent, and I have a master's of computer science. And well, we are full team of master's degree developing this solution. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks a lot, Victor. Really appreciate. Okay, now Kevin, it's your turn to get some exciting questions out and take this forward.
Let's go. Will, if I may, I'll just start with you as a logistics leader. What do you see, and an open-ended question, maybe a softball to start, as the biggest frustrations in the ecosystem surrounding logistics today?
Sure. I'll speak macro and then micro.
Great.
Macro, I think the biggest frustration is there has been so much investment over the past 20 years plus. My career goes back 20 years, and I know with a lot of what I see, a lot of the investment goes back even before then. But just in the last 20 years, when you're talking about networking, whether that be traditional networking like EDI interface or XML interface, or sort of more modern interfacing, you might say like blockchain or networks of networks, people still use freight forwarders and fourth party logistics, and that's kind of ridiculous if you think about it, because that's a lot of margin and a lot of, we've seen poor performance despite the incredible technology investment and the fact that we still have effectively consultants in the midst of global supply chains and global logistics. So at the macro level, I'd say that's where a lot of the frustration is, that despite the incredible investments and the multiple generations that those investments have gone through, we still have poor planning, we still have poor forecasting, and we still have poor visibility. At the micro level, what my clients in every industry that I see are dealing with is they're just not ready. They talk about being ready, and their competitors are usually ready, but they're not ready. And so just clean up and trying to find radical technology solutions that sidestep the problem of cleanup. So that's why I think vision is so interesting, because it sidesteps the problem. That's why I think IoT is so interesting, especially things like RFID, that I actually think vision plus RFID is absolutely the right way to get a lot of problems solved. That sidesteps the data problem. Humans are inevitably the problem. They don't get how important clean data is. And so I think at the micro level, that's the frustration, but that's also the solution, because the panacea, if you will, the utopia is digital twin. And in a warehouse, that's realistic, it's feasible. But the moment you step outside the warehouse, it becomes, in degrees impossible. And so I think a lot of people who grew up in the warehouse world, like I did, actually, that's where my career began, is implementing warehousing systems. We kind of expect grid architecture and a lot of control that is not possible the moment you step into the yard or you step outside the gate. But even then, despite having advanced warehousing systems and the closest thing to a digital twin that you can get, you still have bad data, you still have bad process at the micro level.
We work with a military company, and they say overtly they're 5 years behind the tech, any aspect of tech, which, is shocking and horrifying in one way. And that's sort of on the micro level, just to support a piece of that. Well, that was a great opening comment. Dean, could I go to you? A similar question, sort of frustration, but maybe if this fits, could you focus on sort of policymakers and some regulation that you see, or for that matter, don't see in the logistics area, or CPG, or even manufacturing, certainly?
I think Will hit a lot of things on the head. With integration is a challenge, and part of that is that these systems don't communicate with each other. That's something that we see time and time again, is that you've got all these standalone systems, and they all have their own language. Some of them do have commonality. Some of them, communicating through things like SQL or through other types of communication protocols. We need to get our hands around how we're going to communicate that data in order to maximize the value of it. We've been gathering, everybody says big data. Well, we've been gathering data for a very long time, and we continue to grow more data, and there are more touch points and more measurements. I love the idea of a vision system where we can take and analyze some of this data and utilize AI to maximize what we're getting out of it. Because if we can't get to the point of having actionable items within manufacturing, within warehouse systems, I had a guest on my show who works for Kenco, and he talked about some of the challenges that they have in technology, because sometimes people look at a warehouse system and you think about what you're trying to do. Well, more manufacturers, because of a shortage of people, they're trying to say, hey, can you do more of this? Can you take ownership of this product at an earlier stage? Well, we have to figure out how we solve that for people. How do we help people to take ownership when now you're adding a new system and integrating with a new system and communicating with it? If we can use things like vision to optimize things, I think people don't understand where vision goes, but one of the areas is to understand things like safety. When you walk around something, 3 out of 4 people are going to do it the same way. One is going to do it differently. And using vision systems to optimize that can really help set things like policy, set things like protocols to optimize what is the best way.
Great, that's amazing thought path and perfect. Gareth, could I turn to you with sort of similar thinking, certainly in Joburg in South Africa and other countries on the continent, but also maybe even globally, what sort of frustrations are you finding in the ecosystem these days?
Unfortunately, I can only speak at the micro level because I don't know much about the macros of the industry. And I deal with a lot of businesses in the warehousing space. And I think there's a level that this conversation happens at the first world and the developed nations. And I think you guys are having the conversation at that level. What's interesting for me is when you come to the third world, it's almost a different conversation, because when you talk about a technology in a sector being able to substantially improve something, it's about the cost of measuring that against the cost of the human element, right? So a developer in the States costs $120,000 for the best developer. Here in South Africa, it's $60,000. So if you've got a technology that improves my coding by 20%, I'm not using it in South Africa because I just hire more developers at 50% of the cost and I get a similar result. So I think there's almost 2 conversations to this, what the first world's doing and what the third world's doing. And another sort of hidden thing in it, I've noticed with a lot of businesses, is while they agree a lot of these emerging technologies will increase their revenue lines, it comes back to I've got people to do that, and it's not cost effectively replacing that. But also, a lot of these technologies have a 2 to 3 year timeline. And sure, you're increasing my my market share by 30% per annum, but if I'm taking 2 to 3 years to pay it off, and you're a startup where a lot of these emerging market technologies come, am I going to see that return on investment? Am I going to see that horizon before you go bust or go out of business? There's a whole bunch of complicated things that I think, for me, vision solves at a very real level, because there's not a huge uptake. You can see the use cases very quickly at no cost, and it's while it's got thousands of potential use cases, it's got a handful of really easy use cases, and that's something a lot of these technologies don't have. You need to sit down with someone that's running their business, and they're making money, right? And now you're pulling their attention, and they're busy people. And it's like, cool, you'll increase my revenue by 50%, but I have to do like a 4-week training course, and then I have to divert team resources to bring them up to speed, and I got to spend like $500,000 on training. And it even if it works, at that point, it's becoming really complicated for me, and I may as well just go back to doing my business that's already making money. And one of the things I see different with the AI revolution is people can't just sit back and do nothing. They can't just divert back to the way they were doing business, because they will be taken over by competitors that have incorporated artificial intelligence into their businesses. And I think Vision is ideally positioned in that respect, with a zero cost to bring on efficiencies, and it's part of a trend that's getting a lot of people that would prefer to just not participate, getting them into the play and excited about things.
That's brilliant. Great stuff from all 3 of you guys. And years ago, I learned that choice and convenience, those two words are sort of vital to any kind of transition or change that a company or even an individual for that matter wants to make. And sort of ease of use, just to pick up on a piece of that, Gareth, is so vital. One of the, and not to do the Vyzion AI pitch at this moment, but just one of the things that we see as a great advantage is ease of use and adoption. So, so thanks, all three of you. Just maybe going to Dean to change up the rotation a little bit. Dean, if you, and we've touched on these themes, but it may be a little bit deeper look. If you had a superpower to bring some constructive, positive change to the industry, what would it be, and sort of the why piece of it? In other words, why would it be valuable?
I think everybody has seen the value that AI can produce. Are we there yet? I think we're working there. I don't know if we're 100% there, and I don't know that AI, because of what it is, we ever would be there, because things constantly evolve and change. I think the value of AI, we're seeing companies like Nissan and other large scale manufacturers using AI systems to pull in data from existing systems, using that AI to then analyze it. For instance, just to give an example to people, you can measure different things in a manufacturing process. You can measure tonnage, you can measure vibration, you can measure heat, you can measure current. All of those can be measured, and they all have correlate. So as a bearing starts to fail, the bearing heats up, the amperage that it takes to drive that goes up. You can see that the tonnage on the process a lot of times will go up. Being able to correlate these little independent nodes and be able to point to a cause and effect helps people to make better decisions. Again, going back to the data and how we use it, getting to actionable items that we can do. AI promises that for us, and using it with existing vision systems, oh my gosh, it's a no-brainer.
That's awesome. Absolutely awesome. And I love that example, or just to make it real in terms of measurement capabilities and what do you do with it. Will, same kind of thing. You have a superpower now. How do you change how you look at logistics and manufacturing and sort of platforms that way?
So I'll touch back on what I said earlier, which is, what I believe these, like, if you take IoT vision and sort of pattern recognition and various forms of what we consider to be the current generation of commercialized AI, what it does and what it can do very well is surveillance. It can do that very, very well. It can do it better than any human. It can do it forever. I have a truck that can drive to the airport without me barely touching the wheel. It's a remarkable example of a fantastic application of computer vision and surveillance. Can it do performance management? Can it do process excellence? And can it do what I would consider to be true business automation? I would say not yet. I think that those are still the realm of regression-based logic that is housed in traditional business execution systems, especially when we talk about maintenance, repair operations, WMS, TMS, and in manufacturing and production. Why is that? Because the current generation of commercialized AI is some combination of, it's almost like hallucinating an answer. It doesn't really have a way to explain why it has taken a decision tree, at least in terms of what is commercialized in the enterprise today. So when you think of like a Markov decision process, and when you think of what a consultant would do to like pull up a PowerPoint or a Visio diagram and start to say, well, if this, it's a heuristic, it's human. The next generation of artificial intelligence systems are going to do it better than I do it. They're going to be able to get out of the qualitative decision-making processes, and you're going to be able to boot up a sophisticated business with like 4 people. You're going to be able to tell your 3PL or your contract manufacturer why they're not doing it as well as they should. You're going to be able to get beyond surveillance and beyond alerts and maybe track and trace, and you're going to be able to get into what should my KPI actually be? What should my organizational structure actually be? What should my enterprise architecture actually be. And if you were to ask me, like, if I had a superpower and I could just buy SAP and say, we're going to strip it down and build it back up around artificial intelligence, that's what I would do, because I think people, when they're familiar with the current use cases and they really get to it, it's a system that's extraordinarily smart at rote behavior. And, what I do for a living is not rote behavior. It is, take things apart and put it back together in a way that is qualitative and driven by policy, politics, things outside of the digital twin. But I think as that digital twin can handle more qualitative analysis, then that's what I would do if I had a superpower to bring to market something right now. Is I would probably bring like QuickBooks AI to market now, or I would bring something that is built from the ground up, not to just be a linear set of decision-making trees, and it is able to handle the human things that happen in the Excel sheets outside of the system.
Nice, really nice. I had a flash that when you said hallucination and AI and sort of that's out there as a real thing, it made me wonder whether or not a lot of the dystopian language and the published reports that are coming out by the minute are sort of registered somewhere in that in that hallucination phenomenon. In other words, nobody really knows how it works as well as it works, and it makes mistakes along the way. So people are projecting that into a universe that, overthrows mankind and, sort of nothing but hell down the road.
If I may add to that point. So Gareth, you're in South Africa. You're probably familiar with Imperial Logistics. They were recently purchased by Accenture, the big 3PL, 4PL. The origin of some code that they developed turned into some of the inventory control systems that I worked with for the US military. And I think the instructive thing there was that we started with something built in what you described, Gareth, as the third world, which inherently is ambiguous. And you have challenges with process control, you have challenges with talent, you have all kinds of interesting challenges. And we purposefully started with something that was built there to scale it globally for a military application because they deal with exactly the same fundamental challenges. And it just so happened to be the same company, manage the same code base. And I think the instructive thing there is I think we're looking like I got my operation started in Beirut and in Jordan and then ultimately the Emirates and in the Gulf. I'm instructed when I think about the challenges of AI, I don't like to think about the clean boxes that a lot of vendors and a lot of developers expect will exist in the first world. I'm more interested in how do I take something and make it work in Dubai Mall, which might be clean inside of that little box, but the moment you step outside of Dubai Mall, you're living in a third world, environment. I think we have a lot to take and a lot to learn from the application of these technologies in places like Singapore, in places like Southeast Asia, in places like Africa, because I think the use cases will become much more apparent to us when we run into the normal non-clean box problems.
Sweet. Great. Gareth, South Africa, magic wand.
A magic wand for South Africa. I know it's not related to AI, but I provide power.
We might not have enough time. I'm sorry, but lo and behold,
Okay.
generally speaking, how would you use a magic wand?
A magic wand for South Africa. I think I have it. It's called Vyzion.ai.
There you go, my friend. There you go.
To Will's points. Yeah, it's a lot of the stuff you guys are developing. It's got use case in the first world, but we have so much more use for this in the third world because we lack skills and shortages, and Vyzion can sort of import those, which is really cool.
Awesome. We've touched on this, and it's the general theme of the discussion. How important a role do you see startups and specifically AI, since we're in the nest right now? How important a role do you think they'll play in disrupting the space? In other words, in 3 to 5 years from now, will, despite what we've talked about, which is the fact that some companies, maybe many companies, are slow to use the newer technologies. In 3 to 5 years, is there going to be a tipping point to allow much more pervasive use of AI? In other words, we can conjure in our heads that it should be the case, and this is a cognoscenti group that sort of could allow for that. But generally speaking, on the floor of the manufacturing plant is AI going to find its stronghold in the next, whatever appropriate period of time, 3 to 5 years, just for the sake of the question? Dean,
If
could
you're,
I go ahead?
if you're talking 3 to 5 years,
Yep.
I'd say you could quite confidently exclude the big players like OpenAI, Microsoft, and Google in terms of manufacturing and enterprise. And I think it's startups that are going to provide that market entry. But it's an interesting question because if you extended that to 10 years, I'd say OpenAI, Google, Tesla, the AI engines, and approaching AGI, they're going to be complete game changers that may flip the board. And generally, I'd say the trend is for the edge of technology to be in the startup environment. It started about 2016, but big corporates started closing down R&D departments, and we saw it with Facebook. When they went into the metaverse, they just bought up all the top metaverse startups. So I think to your question, startups are a central role in the rise of AI.
Yeah, what's interesting about that, Gareth, and Pankaj knows this story because I had a conversation with the top innovation guy from Microsoft in Europe a couple of weeks ago. And he said if they go to clients Europe, I guess, CEOs, and they say, listen, we have a proposal for you that we will guarantee a 7% increase in ROI if you infuse all Microsoft's capabilities, including AI, into your overall business operation. So within a year, guarantee a 7% lift, and they can't sell it. Because he said nobody understands it. Right? They just get to a point where they're like, all the CEOs are just like it's an on-off switch kind of thing, more than sort of how it works. They're just like, if it works, I want it. If it doesn't, then can't use it. So, Dean, same question to you, if I may.
I think 5 years is a aggressive goal. I think that there's opportunities that will be improved and can be improved over 5 years. Much to the points that we've heard so far, there are challenges though, both in first world and third world countries as we go along for evolving the system. However, one thing I will say is this: if you look at drone technology, you look at robot technology, where we were 10 years ago to where we are today, big difference is cost and accessibility. As goes the technology, the same technology that used to make $1 million drones years ago is the same technology we're using now to keep a $150 drone stable. There's more technology that we're able to incorporate and pull into other areas. Same with robots, and I see that with AI being the same thing, that as we go along, we're going to see more of this technology being adopted and pulled into other directions and being leveraged to maximize opportunities. Is it a 5-year plan? I think we'll see big gains over the next 5 years, but will we see the adoption rate go skyrocket? I think we're still a little ways away from that until that price point gets down. I mean, look at 3D printers. You can get a 3D printer for a couple $100 now from where they used to be thousands of dollars. So I think accessibility lends itself to development.
For sure. And a great point. And price point is a key, always a key element. Will, how about startups and disrupting the space? Do you see the leverage there?
I do. I agree completely on price. And I think the interesting thing about price is it's not usually so disruptive. It tends to kind of seep in to the industry when it's a price thing, because it comes down on a curve, and it's usually a managed curve. It's not really market. It's usually driven by people trying their best to keep the old price high because it's dropping so quickly. But in terms of startups, I mean, I'll just take the contrarian view, even whether or not I even believe in it. Dean, I'll just try and make a counter argument. Let's say the answer is yes. I do think that that if a company were to come along and offer financial automation, I think it could change things. I think that I could imagine a situation where a very large corporation, let's say not publicly traded, but a very large privately held corporation could spin off a unit on an accounting package plus AI, and prove a point that they could basically rebuild their company with 1/10 of the employees, especially around finance and their application of cash and their application of financial excellence. It's a little bit outside the scope of this conversation because I think I agree with Dean on, price is probably going to be the thing that drives warehousing and manufacturing because it's such an asset heavy industry anyway. It costs a lot to be in these businesses. Warehouses cost a lot. Robotics costs a lot. Trucks cost a lot. These are asset-based capabilities. So I'm not sure about 5-year timeline on that particular area. But I think on the soft side, what we just saw with marketing and copy and creativity with something like ChatGPT demonstrated that something like finance is ripe for disruption in the next 36 months. And I think if, being in the ERP business where I have multiple clients right now, just trying to make the transformation from one accounting system to another, when it's the same application, by the way, it's a Microsoft ERP to a Microsoft ERP, and it's still an almost business crippling journey for them to take. And it's the same code base, just an upgrade. And they're having that much trouble just getting their core accounting as an enterprise from one to the next. If somebody could come along and disrupt that in the next 36 months, I think it would move very quickly because the value proposition is so high. It is so expensive. And there's very little that people get out, that businesses get out besides compliance in financial automation today. But if their balance sheet could become a weapon because of the tool, and I do believe that these tools are in production today. And I think this is going to be where we're going to, and then I think that will trickle into integrated warehousing and manufacturing and logistics systems because it tends to start in the accounting package with enterprise systems.
Wow. Good stuff. In fact, Will, since you have the mic and you've led into the next and maybe final question is, beyond what you just said, sort of what are the key hurdles that the new technologies and innovation can or will be facing over again, some random period of time, 3 to 5 years? You've all touched on it in various ways, but if you had to nail down 2 or even 3 significant hurdles, adoption a challenge to adoption will address, what do you think they'd be? Or what do you see?
One, legitimacy. Gareth mentioned Odoo. I think every ERP vendor, every enterprise technology vendor out there, and I'll just give one and pass the mic, but I don't think that what they're doing today is legitimately architected for AI decision-making process. I think it is glorified business intelligence at best. And I think I can do better in a lot of cases with Tableau or ClickView or Power BI than this. I really believe that because of the heuristics involved, but I think it will change. I think we're right on the edge. And I think that the key to all of this is if somebody comes to me and says, what are my options and why did you create them? I would give them, these are your options and these are the pros and cons. And this is why I believe in them. And that's what we want the system to do is say A, B, or C, and here's why. That's what we're waiting on. It's not enough to just say pattern recognition at the enterprise level, in my opinion, because I think that exists. It's existed for a long time, and it can be heuristically rebuilt into a dashboard that helps me make a decision. But when you ask the decision maker, why did you make the decision? Why did I invest $30 million in this asset or choose not to? The day that we can get beyond, I think, this kind of surveillance technology or this generative technology, which is extraordinarily cool, don't get me wrong, but it's not yet at the AI powered business level. And I think anybody in the ERP space, including Odoo or anybody else who says, hey, we're building this into they don't want to admit that their underlying architecture is not set up for AI powered decision-making, even their abstractions. And so I'm going to pass the mic, but I mean, Kevin, I could go on this one for days because I'm consulting with a firm that's trying to do it.
Found is Tito's Mexican restaurant on Port Royal in Spring Hill.
Is that
less
me?
than 2 miles to your west, and it gets 4 stars on Yelp. Does that one sound good?
Is that me?
I don't know. Well, maybe. I'm not sure.
I don't know. But anyway,
yeah,
I think that's my answer is there's a certain factor of illegitimacy in marketing that's going on. And I think that wall is going to get breached in the next 3 years. But I don't want to take anything away from the current generation of technologies. I think adoption is like already there. But I think you're asking me, the next generation. What is that next generation? It's that kind of capability, and it's just not yet. It's not yet available within your typical suite of enterprise technology products.
Yep, and I love the why factor, Will. That just sort of changed. That's a game changer right there in its own sense. It's one thing to line up a lot of data, but it's another thing entirely to say, here's why, and give.
Do you know what General Marshall used to ask everybody from lieutenant to general? He used to say, "Are you sure that you've thought this through?" He would say it to everybody, and you just can't do that today. You can't do it, and we're going to get there, but we're not there yet.
Yep. Dean, how about you, sir? Again, you've touched on it, but just if you had to pick one or two frustrations or that you would think are core to the next couple of few years, where do you see them?
Will's point is spot on. People are throwing AI around as if that's really means something and really is AI. A lot of time it is just trending, things that are trending. They're not specifically AI, and they're not really to the level of machine learning. I mean, that's the evolvement of all of this, is getting to where it's hands off. But the reality is somebody's coding this, somebody's writing it. There is some level of code in there, but you want the machine learning aspect of where AI takes you to where it's learning on its own. I don't have to do anything. It can already see trends on its own. I don't have to program that in or code it in. That is a challenge. The evolvement of this also is a better understanding of how it applies to our systems. Let's use vision as an example. Currently, most of the vision systems you're taking a graphical representation and you're deciding what's important within that snapshot of that video. How do I take and leverage that to where it determines what is important and follows that throughout the process of what's going on? How do I determine that? And I think that the other people that are going to need to integrate with this same software becomes more important. How do I integrate with that and take it to different places? Because one of the challenges is that if I want to use it for one process, is this also being used for other processes? And how universal that's going to be, I think we're still a little ways off on that being helpful, but I think we're moving in the right direction as we're getting there.
Nice. And Gareth, how about you and the biggest hurdles that you see in the market?
Hurdles, I'd say IP, mostly intellectual property. And I mean, there's a bunch of really cool AI assistants I wanted to include in my business. And I've had a lot of hesitation because when you speak to the founders, they're using all the conversations in my boardroom to improve the deep learning. And that's like the secret sauce of my business is the boardroom. And I don't want that spilling out. So I'd say IP is definitely a hurdle. Although I have a sense that we're going to get over that. It's very interesting what Dean's saying about data, because it's a trend in the gaming industry as well. They're looking at AI as a solution to take tiny bits of data and create the same amounts of information without collecting all the data that they collect now to provide that information. So I think that there's some hope to addressing that challenge. But then more broadly, I think, AI development has had a lot of false dawns. There was a big false dawn in 2016 where they solved embodiment and object identification. We thought, okay, cool, we're there. And we weren't really there. And I suspect we're at another false dawn. And to the point Will was talking about an AI that can basically understand. That I think that's the next challenge in AI, because if you look at AlphaGo, it'll beat all the best Go masters in the world. But I saw there's an amateur player use an island strategy, and to counter an island strategy, you need to understand what a Go piece is and what an island is. And AlphaGo doesn't understand that. So an amateur can reliably beat AlphaGo, which I think one of the Go masters in the world committed suicide after being beaten 100 times in a row by AlphaGo. So it's very clear that AI does not understand. And understanding requires a description of truth that I don't think we have in society, because we live in a world of functional truth. We're evolved beings. What we see is literally useful or harmful to us. Anything in between, we can't actually see or perceive. So I suspect that everyone's excited about AGI and they're saying 5 years, 10 years. I think we're at another false dawn, and that might get locked at that false dawn for the next 10 or 20 years. Because it's a super hard problem.
Yeah, fair point. And, given, if I may, the genius of the discussion, you guys are amazing. How about the human factor? That change for human beings is hard, right? How do you transition from one place to another, right? In your own personal life, never mind sort of with people that report to you, or sort of an entire operation that you're trying to deal with, to try to convert that and bring it over to a new place that incorporates new technologies and such. It's one of the great challenges that I think we face as a species. I want to ask Pankaj, how are we doing on time? Do you have a sense? Are we sort of at the edge or close, or do we go to the next phase?
Yeah, I mean, again, really interesting insights, and we could have gone with all this, insights for hours and hours, but we have to move on to the next part of the event now. So if you have any burning question that you really want to ask, let's do that, and then jump into the roast session.
No burning questions.
No burning questions. Okay, fantastic. So now, as I mentioned in the beginning, that this is the second part of the event where we pitch the vision solution, the startup solution, to our extremely intelligent panelists and try to get their feedback on the solution, try to get some brutal questions from our panelists, and obviously guidance as well. So Kevin, are you ready to share your screen and take us through the vision solution?
Yes, Jorge and I are, and Jorge, if you'd be kind enough to throw up the deck, that'd be great. Thank you.
Here we go.
Cool. And we'll make this efficient or speedy only because we've touched on it in a variety of different ways, and specifically at the beginning. But generally speaking, and all of you guys have been very complimentary about the product, which, I can't thank you enough for that. But the next page, Jorge, if you'd be kind enough. Yeah, so our value proposition is, we try to keep it as simple and straightforward as possible. We help companies extract data from their day-to-day operations that they couldn't discover, see, or understand before. And each of you have touched on that as sort of a valuable capability for companies to view and use and engage. And Gareth, maybe you probably are right that there will be a series of quantum leaps with technology, and specifically AI over the next few years. So, but at this stage of the game, there's a lot of data that is available that is not being used or quantified or packaged in a way to allow companies to work smarter and better and more efficiently. So we feel that Vyzion.ai covers that base today. So the shorthand, or the way to think about it visually, is there, as I mentioned, 1 billion cameras worldwide. This picture, I think, makes the point. Human beings deficient in their ability to stay focused on 20 cameras at any given moment for all the appropriate human reasons. And so a tool like Vyzion.ai is vital to help companies sort of get to the next level of the data that they need to be more efficient about their operation. Jorge? So the solution is, as we pointed out, software that sort of integrates cutting-edge computer vision and AI, analyzes and measures, and then covers quantifiable methods and ways for companies to be more efficient and effective in their operation. The next slide, and I'll ask Jorge to sort of walk through some of the functionalities just to give you a sense of this.
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. And well, the functionalities, the AI functionalities that come out of the box on the solution right now are listed here. As you can see, there's people analytics, which is, we think, important, because think about the data that comes out of warehouses, distribution centers, even retail stores right now. It's all product related, right? It's how many boxes do I have left of this product? What do I need to order? What merchandise it's going where? But what about the human aspect of it? What about how many people do I have in my retail store at a certain given time? Or how many people are gathering near the docks, near the shipping docks, and how many people should be there, right? I mean, are they there because they're supposed to be there, or are they doing something that they shouldn't be doing, right? So it's practically impossible for a person watching 50 cameras at the same time to really pay attention to all these business rules and being able to take that data to a security guard or an asset manager and say, hey, there's something going on here. Can you go to this dock? Can you do these? And then, for example, in retail stores, they place the product based on how they think the people walk, right? But how do they really know it right now? I mean, it's impossible to measure and determine a path track of a specific individual just doing it manually with a monitoring person. So this is the value. Well, these are the functionalities, and that's the value that we see in our product. Obviously, the benefits, as I said, understand human interactions, reduce theft, minimize accidents, uncover fraudulent activities, identify unauthorized access and gatherings, recognize people flow, people place dynamics, which is very interesting, and it's understanding that or correlating those two things brings interesting data to businesses. Area perimeter protection, real-time alerts, actionable data, and determinative analytics.
Jorge, if I could just jump in for an anecdote that sort of we're currently working on a project for an airport, and their core objective is to how to generate more revenue from the airport itself. So they're using our heat mapping capability to understand body flow throughout the airport after security, just to sort of make it slightly more precise, to see where they can place kiosks and sort of other retail opportunities to generate more revenue. So that just feels like such a practical use of the product. Sorry, Jorge, thanks.
For sure. No, thank you.
Do you want to show the video up there briefly, just to give, if it hasn't been?
Sure.
Yeah, just to give you guys a literal sense of the product.
Yes, just bring it up. Share this new screen. Here we go. So just a 50-second video to show you exactly what.
Please turn on the volume, Jorge.
Yes, it's just music, but this is a product at work, right? How we track people, how we detect personal protection equipment, how we track cars, identify person, do vehicle classification, speed tracking. For example, in this case, it's line saturation that could work either with vehicles or with people. I mean, all of these, this is just the tracking functionality, but the the important part here, it's the data that it actually generates, and that it's value to companies, right? To either react in a more immediate way, or even in some use cases, be proactive, right? And do not wait to have a problem already there, and be proactive and actually avoid being in a difficult position or having a problem, right? So our offering right now, our product runs on edge. That means it runs on servers locally. All the processing power happens on premise, and then you can extract data from a web dashboard and all that. But this is our pricing model. A server or an installation that can run up to 20 cameras, it's $1,750 a month. Up to 60 cameras, $50,000. Up to 120 cameras, $9,600. And up to 240 cameras, it's $18,000 a month, which is very, very cost effective if you think of all the value that we can bring, right? And if you measure it against human, how do you call that, monitoring guys? Yep. It's even more cost effective.
Never
right?
mind the issue, if I may jump in with one piece of color, Jorge. Remember the issue of if you had to buy 240 cameras that had software installed to do some AI, they're at a minimum of $3,000 per camera, to up to $5,000 or more for that matter. So the cost effectiveness is very real, especially as you use it in larger environments, larger camera environments.
Good point. Yes. Most of our competitors are hardware-based solutions. That means that the cameras themselves have the embedded capabilities. But as Kevin says, in large operations, for example, Walmart has 20,000 cameras. So multiply that times $3,000 each. It's a huge investment in hardware, right? Well, what we're doing there, it's just provide the software to their existing architecture or their existing cameras, right? So current customers using our solution, AB InBev, 2 manufacturing plants, Walmart, Mexico. We have these pilot tests going in distribution centers, warehouses, and stores. Grupo Morsa, it's the largest auto part dealer in Mexico. They're using the product along their 21 distribution centers. RCO, it's a highway developer. They use it in 12 lanes and 2 different toll booth locations to automate car classification, and that at the end of the day determines the fare that each one of the vehicles pay by going through the booths, right? And these are some tech specs of the product. We run on Linux. As I said, currently we run on servers. We run on the edge. We're working on the SaaS product. It will be available in Q3. And we have a proprietary video management system. We have live alerts, what we call it, smart alerts. We have a connection and health status monitor. We have a smart monitor that actually brings to the monitor to help the person looking at 200 cameras, only the cameras that actually have something worth look at, right? So people tend to think that AI will replace humans at certain jobs. It might as well be the case in certain scenarios, but in this case, our product can be used to bring superpowers to the person actually looking at the monitors, right? So with these, we end the deck, the
There you go.
presentation. Products.
So back to you, Pankaj, just as the host and timing and next phase.
And this is the time to ask difficult questions. And I know that some of you are already big fan of Kevin, Jorge, Victor, and Vision Solution, but let's keep that fandom aside and ask some real difficult questions, please.
I got a couple things for you. Oh, Gareth, if you're trying to talk, I can't hear you. I'll give you the microphone if you can make it work. How about I'll start talking and then you make it work.
Please, Bill, go ahead.
I definitely think from a sequence point of view in the deck. Well, I'm gonna compare you with what I know about Procore. So Procore is an incredibly expensive, but due to licensing, so it's like purposely expensive product that does many of the things that you do. But what they've done is they've verticalized like crazy in the construction industry. I would use this as, you know, I have a couple other notes and I'll share them with you, Kevin, offline. But like, I think this one is a good one because they have purposefully stated that they are a vertical solution. So when they talk to people about hard hats and PPE, they're talking to safety managers at construction sites. They're talking to end customers that have prime contracts with a city or a government or a big client that has, you know, really specific things they're looking for. And so I feel, looking at your deck, that it lacks that verticality. It lacks that specific industrial application. It's kind of a catch-all across industry, which logistics is a, you know, and manufacturing can be. But I think the advantage of a Procore presentation is, you know, they're pitching to a guy who's used to seeing hard hats, and they got pictures of guys with hard hats. It's very specific to that industry, and I suspect that you could make 5 decks that would appear to use your software in a way that could appear more vertical. I suspect that's the first thing. And I think the second thing is just from a product perspective. I'm kind of a product guy. I feel if you're pitching the Walmarts of the world, quality control and inventory count management to be, you know, from a product perspective, acknowledging I have no idea what the feasibility of this is, but I feel that if you could couple what you're doing with people logistics and pattern recognition with vehicles and so on, with no kidding, I can give you perfect inventory accuracy without RFID. I can give you perfect quality control, you know, without extra quality engineers. I can tell when boxes are damaged. I can tell when labeling is not there. You may have to do some learning on a site-by-site basis or a client-by-client basis, but it's worth putting into your pitch. And I think it's worth trying to add to your feature set to be relevant in a distribution center or a yard where you're already pitching those kinds of clients anyway. And like I said, Kev, I'll send you other stuff offline.
That's perfect. I mean, I love product development thinking, so thanks for that. And the idea of the deck being too general, fair point. In fact, Pankaj and Jorge and I talk about that with regularity. In other words, how do you narrow your focus to create increased value and contact and intake? So fair points, both points being super fair. So thanks. Dean, maybe.
Yeah,
You don't get the mic, you get the bat in this case, because Pankaj wants you to hit his heart.
I certainly agree 100% with Will. There's no question that the deck is very broad. If I was sitting here as a manufacturer and I'm looking at it, or somebody in certain other aspects of business, it lacks specificity in what you're targeting there. For instance, like path tracking. Okay. Coming out of manufacturing, how I see this and where I see this having value is, I've got a guy who walks around to the back of the machine, crawls underneath the feed and goes into an area he shouldn't be in. He's not coming in through the front gate, safety gate. Well, I can see that adds value by path tracking, and not because you're trying to And it has to be very specific too, because obviously one of the things when you start talking about what this can do, you don't want it to become Big Brother, because as soon as people start hearing, they're like, I'm not sure where this is going. But if you're trying to take this into manufacturing and you're monitoring employees and where they're going, and whether or not they're in the bathroom for 10 minutes, it gets very murky in what you're doing. But I think you can put a pitch together that clarifies a little bit more on some of these points that are really valuable to understand, especially from a safety standpoint. For me, and a safety guy, that's an area that is really clear that this can add so much value. And emotion detection, understanding when somebody's upset, understanding their reactions, how they behave, how they operate and function. Those are areas that could be really helpful, but I think it needs to be clarified in the presentation to make it maximize the opportunities.
Excellent, excellent, great stuff, and dead right yet again.
I'm not sure why I'm not coming. There, I'm coming through.
Yeah,
now.
you're
Cool.
perfect. We can hear you now.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Please unmute.
Oh, now you're on.
Cool. Yeah.
you're back.
So I like you guys a lot, so you have to forgive me for this criticism. It is a similar criticism I have leveled at you for the Vyzion website. The first pitch you gave in the demo day with Pankaj, that was flawless. The way you present on your website and what you communicated today, there's a mismatch. And you're providing a lot of detail. If I could provide some guidance there, a really good pitch should be short, but you want to give that description, right? But you don't want to give that detail until someone's ready to listen to that detail. And a good way to structure your pitch is strip out all the detail and make bold claims. I will drop your pilferage by 30%. I will track all your people and drop all this. And from those bold claims, and just stop there and then end the presentation. And then what's going to happen, because you're pitching to smart people in manufacturing, they know their problem is better than you do. And they're going to go, how is he going to do that? And they're going to ask you the question, how are you going to drop my pilferage rates by 30%? Now you can give a super detailed answer. If you structure it that way, you've got like a 10-minute pitch, and you spend the next 45 minutes with people just asking you questions that helps you compose the pitch to them specifically. And then to speak more about the product, because I think we're in agreement on the pitch there. How are you going to deal with my IP? If I'm doing a manufacturing process with furniture, and I'm the best in the business, and I'm an actual manufacturer, not an assembler, there's some secrets in my manufacturing process that I'm comfortable right now because I've got low-level employees with their labor divided, and they're not really working together to put the whole picture together. And I can see the whole picture, and I can silo everything. So it's all available. The only thing that's not happening is I don't have a camera watching 24/7 observing everything. And while I'm excited for your solution doing that, it's gonna, take the Coca-Cola recipe, for example. It's a secret recipe, but if you had an AI system that could tell me where they're buying all the ingredients from, over time, you'd be able to discover the Coca-Cola recipe. So how are you going to deal with IP challenges?
Great, really, really valid. Victor, do you have any thoughts on the IP thing? Just like a short thought to be able to have a point of reference as we get ready to close out the session.
Well, we have to work a way to keep improving our models without compromising any of the information of the client. Certainly something we have to put a big focus on.
The reality right now is that all processing happens on local servers, right? And that's kind of something that we've encountered with customers, that they want for their IP to remain local, and that's why our solution right now it's edge, because they're worried about that precisely, Gareth. You know, like, what are you going to do with my information? Where is it going to travel? Who's going to see it? What are you going to do with it? And by having the edge solution, they at least feel safer that all of these information will stay under their control, right? That's a general feeling that we have right now from the market and from enterprise customers.
Perhaps an ignorant question, but so you got the pilots in Walmart and you're busy developing use cases with that pilot project. And I understand your curtain management system has been developed with Walmart. Now that's something that once your AI, the algorithm's designed to do, does it actually need the data still from Walmart for it to function? Like, can you train it to do something, and once it's trained, divorce it from the data, and then it still works?
If you want to explain, Victor, on how we train the algorithms.
Yeah, once the train is on, the neural network has extract all the information, all these how to say it? Well, all these images and videos in the end only translates in some weights for a neural network, and once it's done, we don't need it anymore, and it's also not reversible. From these weights, we cannot get back the videos. So once the training is done, we don't need it anymore.
So that's very, very crucial. That's a good answer to get over the IP wall. Is, you know, once the model is trained, it's just a mathematical algorithm, and there's no way to reverse engineer that data. That's a new understanding for me in AI, and understanding that really puts a lot of my my IP concerns to rest.
Is that because you're dealing in aggregates and abstractions? Are you sure that it can't? If you were to begin to delve into what was sitting in the model, do you truly understand that it can't be? I mean, people have figured out how to do this with ChatGPT by asking it the right questions. You know, how are you sure?
How are we sure to not get the backward process?
Yeah, like let's say, yeah, I get that I can't pull up a video, you know, that because that's not part of the model, but how can you be sure that I can't figure out how to ask it if my competitor's PPE compliance is good or bad? How are you sure if we're both using the same product?
Jorge, perdón, no entendí muy bien la pregunta. ¿Podrías traducírmelo?
Sí, ¿cómo estamos seguros? Por ejemplo, entrenaste el algoritmo de equipo de protección personal con el cliente A. ¿Cómo el cliente B puede, cómo puedes asegurarte que el cliente B no puede ir al producto y preguntarle, oye, sé que lo entrenaron el algoritmo con el cliente A. El cliente A tiene una política de uso de equipo de protección personal o no? O sea, ¿cómo puedes asegurarte de que otro cliente diferente usando el mismo producto no obtenga información del competidor?
Yeah, exactly.
¿Cómo puedes asegurarte de que no tenga? Sorry, I think I'm not getting this right.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We can take it offline. I'm just interested because I feel like people have shown in these large models that it is possible to unlock information because the system doesn't know why it knows this.
I think maybe you are thinking a step ahead with the analytics and the key information extracted from, but not in the detection phase. I'm talking more about the video and finding all these, for example, a curtain, finding how much of it is open or closed, you know, some stuff really concrete, or a person here their expression, right? Something that is really quantitative. So I'm thinking maybe you're thinking a level ahead with all this information.
I'll just say, in my industry, this accusation is leveled all the time. I'll have multiple clients in the same industry. So how do you hold me accountable? It's ultimately the same kind of question. I think that, Gareth, you would say it's similar kind of question.
And it's to take it in a different direction. It's important that you have a solid, provable answer on that. And because Will's in a position where people blame, and like in my industry, people get blamed unfairly as well. So when there's a lot of blame going around, and there's been a data leak, fingers are going to be pointed at you, perhaps unfairly. So you need a good answer for this.
Got it.
Yeah, and to echo that, in automotive, if you can't prove it's not you, it's you, and you're gonna get a bill.
Yeah. I can be held accountable with, compliance agreements and all kinds of things, and I can't be in two places at once. But if your code base is in two places at once and it's been trained for multiple clients, there's got to be a way you can say with clarity, yeah, but you can't take my, you can't ask my product the right questions to find out about my competitor. When I install an accounting system, it doesn't know anything about the other guy's accounting system. It might know about his best practices because we all work together on that, but it doesn't know anything about the data that crosses customers. But anyway.
Super valuable discussion and great input. Gareth, just to go back to because we've talked about this, I love your approach to the deck, and we'll talk more about that. In other words, how do you sort of draw a client in more effectively with sort of maybe generalized statements, but allow them to be like, how do you do that? And then, you're addressing their concern in a very specific way. So super helpful thinking and really appreciate it. All of it, actually. How about anything else? I guess for the moment, I'll turn back to Pankaj. Are we good on time? Does anybody have
we still have 10 to 12 minutes, and I would love to see if you have any guidance. Guidance could be on go-to-market strategy. It could be on channel partnerships. It could be on something else. If you have any thoughts on that.
I got one for you. So this is a topic in Dean, you may know this is by a different term, but the term I use is autonomic operations or autonomic maintenance. For example, the ability to detect an issue, like let's say you have a camera or a sensor on something that's overheating, is one thing. The ability to kick off a maintenance process in an execution system and order a part and schedule a work order and follow that all the way through and then confirm that it worked, right? Because the new heat image doesn't have the heat problem anymore. That's, I think, is a key area of cost reduction and being able to make the claim that you're able to interface with an execution system in a valid way. So I think that would be something I strongly recommend as a part of your value proposition. Even if you don't have it, it's relatively simple to build. You don't have to build a maintenance system. Those exist. But yeah, Dean, I'm sure you have some thoughts on, similar examples.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And we have networking systems for our stuff, for link systems, but it has to have some level of handshaking and pass through of information so that I'm getting you everything you need through one level of communication. And then on the other side, I need confirmation that this worked. This did happen. This was done. And it has to have some levels of integration between softwares to do that. That's what manufacturers look for, because they want to have a system with a solution. They don't want a product, they want a solution. And when you're providing a solution to them, that the value that you bring is wholly different than just saying, hey, we have an AI product here for you. As they want to see a solution.
I can give you an example on that. For example, Will, you're on an expert on ERPs, and Dean, you mentioned the integration with different systems. So this could work for both of you. Grupo Morsa, for example, uses Odoo as their ERP.
Yeah.
And we one of their requests, it was to customize her product to integrate with Odoo. And so we did. And the use case there, it's they have these, they can ship, they're auto parts dealers and distributors. So they have products this size, they have products this size, or they have products this size, right? So for the smaller items, they go into these tables with 25, 35 different products, and then they put together boxes
Access. Yeah.
with 25 items, right?
Yeah.
So what we did is match the process of putting together or putting inside the box all the items with the item number, with the shipping or the production number on Odoo. So when the customer actually gets the box and they say, hey, I ordered 35 pieces and we only got 32, then the people from Grupo Morsa can go into Odoo and say, okay, pull up the information from this package. And then they interconnect with Vyzion.ai and they say, okay, I want to see the video of this box being put together. And they can prove that they put in 35 pieces, right? And then they send the video to the customer and they say, all right, I have proof here that your box
and
was put together correctly.
I would grant you that as a form of like surveillance and maybe performance management, and definitely within the concept of what we were talking about earlier, like that is obviously what you're prepared to do. I think the next level would be, can you kick off an HR record for, can you tell who did it? It's an interesting question of how do you go from sort of humans getting in the middle of the process to truly trusting that you can automate a process. And the one I gave is sort of the classic example of schedule a work order the part because it's going to break. I think that's where you're able to say with a straight face to business decision makers, this is going to reduce your cost because you're not going to have people in the way. Your part's going to be there on time instead of sort of having a lag time. But I'm with you. I think that's a good example. In that case, what I would recommend is, a lot of proactivity. I'm just making this up right now on this call, but you should already be able to tell if only 32 objects went in and that the total packs was supposed to have 35. You should be able to catch it and tell the warehousing system, don't ship, interrupt the process. That to me is the difference maker in a sort of reactive surveillance process versus like an automated cost savings process, just as an example.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I can sit with you and brainstorm these use cases all day because this is like where I start to nerd out, but I'm with you.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Will.
nice. We'll reserve the right to get back to you to nerd out together.
Really
all good.
appreciate that support, Will. Really appreciate that. I think this is fantastic. Obviously, we were able to gather so much insight for us, for the community, and then we were also able to get some interesting feedback, brutal feedback, honest feedback from esteemed panelists. And I think this is the beauty of these kind of sessions where we are able to learn a lot from these conversations. I know Gareth knew something new today about the Vyzion solution, even though you have had so many calls together, right? So that's, again, a very interesting aspect of this session today. So again, really appreciate everybody's time today. It has been extremely, extremely fruitful. And I hope that we can keep having these kind of sessions together or in a fireside chat kind of format or in some other kind of formats. And we keep supporting each other and different initiatives. So again, thanks everybody and look forward to connecting soon. Take care.
On a personal note, thanks everybody. Really, really appreciate your thinking and help and support. So thanks.
Can I just say, I'm the only one fireside.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Fair enough.
You should be invited first for the fireside chat.
Exactly.
There you go.
You have to be. Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
everybody.